How we doing, team? And welcome back to a brand new episode of the Simply podcast. Every time I do that, I always want to say Simply Sport, but it is the other podcast that we do also on this channel. You can catch that as if you're interested in sport, football, F1. We even talked about rugby on the last one as well. Make sure you check that one out as well. We did the last one with Remy. But this podcast is just with myself today. We have a few topics that we're going to be discussing on this podcast. I am also doing this live on stream as well at twitch.tv/Simply Spud. Feel free to pop over and drop us a follow as well. It is free. And also feel free to check out the podcast on Twitter as well. At the Simply Pod. Keep up to date with whenever things go live or recordings and whatnot. I post it wherever there if you want to keep up with the news and whatnot. But this podcast, like I said, we are doing it live on stream, so I might refer to the chat every now and then. That is one of the benefits of watching it live. But without further ado, we're going to go straight into this podcast. So, a lot of things have been happening over the last few weeks. Some things I haven't actually talked about on the other podcasts, but maybe we're going to cover and maybe talk about a little bit on this one as well. I'm gonna give maybe a few opinions and a few stories as well. So like one of the big things also that's been going on in the last few weeks is the P&O sackings. I mean, Jesus, 800 people lost their jobs over a pre-scripted Zoom call. Like that is just. That is madness. That is madness. I remember when over the lockdown and stuff like that, and there was going to be big news announcements over these Zoom. You had maybe inklings that what the call was about. There's no way that 800 people knew that this was coming. There's just no way. 800 people losing their jobs over a Zoom call is. It's unfathomable, to be honest. I could not imagine. I feel sorry for like those people. It is absolutely crazy, and hope that they manage to get new jobs somewhere. I mean, I know full well the likes of cruise ship work is just entirely different because obviously when you're at sea you can't really see any your friends from like where you would live and stuff like that. So you become best friends with the people on the boats and stuff like that. And it's just an entirely different environment. And obviously, some of these people that have now lost their jobs are going to have to find entirely different careers almost. They probably spend some people probably work there for like tens of 20 years. On these boats, and it's all changed. The whole world's upside down. I remember when I got a little story for you is my first proper job was working for JD Sports, clothing brand in the UK, and they were kind of have a maybe a premium kind of shop really. They were very much about how things looked. They were very much about the kind of this premium kind of image that they had. Because we had the likes of Sports Direct and stuff like that. But they Sports Direct, your value stores, but JD were known for being expensive and being an expensive chav shop. To be honest, let's be real here. But yeah. So that was my first proper job. I got that about when I was about 18. There. And when I was 18, I'm not gonna lie to you, I was full of myself, and I'd made a lot of mistakes in that job, 100%. When I was there, well, the long story of it all is I got sacked after 6 weeks. 6 weeks working at JD, I got sacked. I failed my probational period. There was a lot of things that contributed to this. At first, I blamed JD. I was like, oh no, it's all their fault. You can't work for these. The turnover is awful. I mean, retail in general, turnover staff is quite bad. It's just the nature of retail. Some places are a lot better than others. JD is just one of those shops where their turnover is very high. It just so happens to be that way. That's not necessarily their fault. That is just how it is. Um, and I was awful, right? I was absolutely awful. I know I have a couple people that watch the stream that were maybe managers before or are still managers. I don't know how they would have managed me, and I don't know how I would have managed me, because I once showed up. I was meant to start work at 8 o'clock one day, and I think I showed up about 8:45 with a Greggs in hand, and I was on the open with another manager, so it was only the two of us that were going to be in until about 9 o'clock before the next person came in. And we had to get the tools and all that done, collect the cleaners in. I showed up at 8:45 with a Greggs in hand, acting like it was no big deal. I was just like, "Oh, chill out, man! Come on, it's not the end of the world." And I'm just like, "Oh my god! If I was a manager now and I had to deal with that is, oh man! Like, listen, you live and you learn. But that was definitely one of the it's up there with one of the probably the worst mistakes I made. Listen, I was young. I thought I knew better. It definitely grew me up a lot when I got sacked, and it was definitely the right call at the time. I just remember coming home, and I was so ashamed of myself, and I just didn't want to tell my mum and dad, but I was just like, I have to. I don't have a job now. I need financial support. And I just remember coming in and I'm greeting and all that, and I'm just like, yeah, I think it was my dad I saw first, and I was just like, oh, they've let me go. And I don't even actually fully remember what I said to him. I just remember saying that I no longer worked for JD or something, and it was just like, oh, I just could, like, I didn't know what to say at that point. And this is why I also feel sympathetic to the kind of the people that have lost their jobs at P&O, because me losing my job at JD was my fault, right? I caused that. I should have saw that coming. It was completely 100% on me. This isn't their fault in the slightest. And I know how I felt going and telling my mum and dad that I didn't have a job anymore. There's going to be a lot of young people, especially there's going to be people with families that are going to have to go tell them they haven't got a job anymore, and that's just like, it's heartbreaking, and it's just awful. 800 people lost their jobs over a Zoom call, which is going to be legal procedures as well over this, because the CEO had said that he'd done it illegally, or he did it knowing it was illegal, to sack people, because they have to give them, I don't even know if they got severance packages or anything like that. I don't know if there's any payoffs, but I know that they're bringing in agency workers and they're paying them about $5.50 an hour, which is below minimum wage in the UK. However, when you're on a cruise ship, your wage is different, because you're not a governing body. You're not under government body rules when you're in that on the open water. So realistically, you can get paid whatever at the time. Now, usually you have all these extra benefits when you are working on a cruise ship as well. I'd imagine like meals and stuff that are probably taken care of and whatnot. But $5.50 an hour is still not good enough, especially if you're having to pay for mortgages and stuff like that. That's just really, really low. It's not going to help anyone. So I don't really know what route they're still taking. Whether or not P&O will still be a company after these legal residings are finished, because the CEO seems to be in a lot of heated water. And let's face it, in this day and age where there is so much like social media influence on companies and stuff like that, there's going to be a huge boycotting of P&O, which I guarantee. The only way that they will be able to recover from this is if they offer really unbelievable deals on their cruises, and I'm talking like proper unbelievable, where it seems like you're just getting far too much for your money. That's the only way that they'll survive. That's the only way that I can see that company surviving. and even then, doing that is going to have the problems of the fact that you're still not going to be probably making enough money. So this is where I can't really see them surviving this. Like it's, I mean, we talked about, I think on the Staten podcast, where we talked about Artisan builds and the massive amount of damage that they've done to the brand because of their giveaway fiasco. It obviously this is two different scenarios, but the social media imprint of it is very similar. On the sense of the fact that there's just there doesn't seem to be much way that the company itself can recover from it. Now obviously Artisan builds, they have a lot of other people that work, a lot of other people that do the streaming, so they'll probably find a way, in my opinion, to survive. P&O, I can't really see that coming back, in all honesty. I could see someone else buying the company and not working potentially, but we kind of got to wait and see how these things. Obviously, judging by how P&O is run, it might not be the most profitable business. Therefore, getting a buyer for that kind of business is going to be a difficult one. So we'll have to wait and see how that pans out. But yeah, here's hoping that those 800 people manage to find jobs, maybe potentially other cruise companies, or at least find good careers elsewhere as well. I remember just seeing a few stories, and some of them were just, they're just not good. And you know, there's probably been a lot of expenses that maybe led to P&O doing those kind of things, but nothing really justifies 800 people losing their jobs. I mean, one of the things that's probably causing them a lot of issues, you know, there's so many price rises right now, so many. I mean, the cost of living, at least in my day and age, has never been this high. I remember buying fuel. What was it? Last week I bought fuel, and beforehand, now I should add, before I changed job role, I used to be able to fill my car up for 50 quid, and that would do me for the month. Now, since I moved jobs, it's probably about maybe 120, 130 quid. Now it's probably going to be nearing about 300 now with these new fuel prices. I get my fuel from Costco fuel station. It is the cheapest anywhere. And it still costs me near enough 80 quid to fill up my car every time I do it. And that's just, oh wow. It's not, I mean, the government's talked about lowering it by 5 pence a litre, which will bring it down a wee bit, but it won't bring it down enough to make it like a significant difference. Maybe potentially long term, but it's still not a lot. You know what I mean? Never mind the energy prices as well. A lot of energy bills going up by 40%, which is just unfathomable. You know, you think of just look at what I'm running in here. I've had to up my digs as well. I already pay a fair bit on my digs, but I'm upping mine as well, because it's not fair for me to be running all this in this room and to not up my digs, because I obviously, let's face it, in this household, I probably use the most electricity in this household, right? I probably do, and I should probably up it by more, if I'm being fully honest, because you know, like I said, I run all this. It's not fair. It's not fair for my mum and dad to always bail me out. I mean, eventually I should get my own place once I'm a millionaire, but you know, we just wait for that. We wait for that. We wait to become the millionaire. You know what I mean? You know, we wait to be making that cheddar. You know, who knows? Once I become a superstar on Twitch and YouTube, yeah, there we go. That's the. Jesus, you know what? It's funny as well, because you look at the likes of YouTube, you look at the likes of like content creation and whatnot, and it's frustrating because there's a proven blueprint. I think we brushed over this in again State and Stream as well. There's a proven blueprint to content creation, how you can make money through social media, through Twitch, through YouTube. The biggest component is the hard work and is consistency. Hard work and consistency will get you there. social media is not even necessarily about quality of content as it is about quantity of content. The more content you put out will always trump over the quality, but the beauty of the fact of putting out quantity is that you will get better naturally for putting out loads of content, so therefore the quality improves naturally. So it's a bit infuriating that that's the way it works, but it's the way it works. And it's a proven method of working. Anyone that has made it big on social media without any massive handouts has got it through the fact that they've worked their ass off to get there. It's the way it's been. Everyone knows it more or less. A lot of people don't want to acknowledge it, but that is the way it is. So, yeah, it's infuriating. And listen, I would love to make content creation full time, as would anyone. Anyone would love to make content creation a full time job, full time career path. It's a challenging one. It's one of the. It can be seen as being one of the easiest jobs in the world, but it's really one of the hardest. You're typically doing, if you were to go full time, you're realistically looking at 60 hours of work a week, in one room, doing everything, and it's and you're constantly having to come up with ideas. You're constantly having to edit and stuff like that yourself until eventually you can be making enough to hire someone else to take some of the workload off you. I mean, it's a hard graft, but listen, it's you got to have a certain mentality for it as well. You've got to be able to motivate yourself so much to to do these things. I mean, you look at the likes of athletes and stuff like that, they motivate themselves to make it where they are in their sports and stuff like that. You've almost got to have a similar mentality when it comes to content creation, because if you're not able to push yourself and produce content, not necessarily high quality, produce it in any format, that's a hard one to do. I mean, your mind will get in the way quite a bit as well, when in the sense of like, you know, you'll maybe hesitate to upload something because you're like, is this actually good? Like, is this actually going to do well? Instead of just posting it and waiting to see if it does well. You know, we all try and predict beforehand if something's going to do really good, and instead of actually promoting it, because realistically, you don't actually know if something's going to do well until you actually post it. So why worry about posting it when you don't actually know? The idea is, if you post something every single day, you then have 7 days analytics to go off to then know for certain what works and what doesn't. Like, you know, whether that's times to post, whether that's content that you actually make, you know, what type of content does best. What do people want? You know, you're not going to know this unless you actually post. So that's one of the hardest things. I mean, there's a lot of hard things with content creation. That's why loads of people don't do it. But yeah. So yeah, moving on. I mean, I don't know how I got to content creation through Fuel Crisis, but listen, you know, these things flow. This is the podcast. One of the reasons I started the podcast is to kind of get a lot of the nonsense that's in my head out onto a platform so that you can all enjoy listening to me talk nonsense. That is the idea at the end of the day. And listen, you know what? It's weird, right? I've only been doing this podcast maybe... I've done actually 6. One of them I didn't post because after I was editing it, I was like, this is not good. I'm not posting this. You know, one of the things I've noticed with doing the podcast so far that I've done, I've gotten a lot better at just talking. You know, beforehand, I definitely was not fluent at kind of just talking about anything. And I've kind of noticed in myself wise, I've actually been getting a lot better at this, particularly intros. Intros I'm getting so good at now. Despite the fact I always mess up a little bit, I've managed to find a way to make it work. Which I definitely, when doing YouTube videos the first time, I was nowhere near. I was not able to do that, definitely. I was not able to just get it to roll into conversation like I can now, which I now acknowledge is something that I can actually do. So I'm buzzing with the fact that I can do that now. It's kind of a skill I've just developed myself, and I got that through just posting, and I wouldn't have got there if I didn't, just put the content there or start recording it and whatnot. I mean, this is going to be the sixth podcast I will have posted, but I've done 7 in total. Like I said, there was one I did I did that live on stream. After, when I was editing it, I was just like, this just isn't good. This doesn't reflect what I want this to do. And you know what? I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't recorded. So listen, we find these things sometimes. It is what it is. Hopefully one day this podcast will take off. I don't know if it will. The odds are always stacked against you with these kind of things, whether or not it will take off or not. But you know what? We won't know unless we try. So we post these things out and we see what works. And who knows? Maybe one day I'll be able to do this full time. Imagine being a full time podcaster. Professional shite talker. Yes. I mean, I'll put that on my Facebook page. Those people that got on Facebook, I've got, what do you do for a job? Oh, I'm a full-time fucking legend. And you're just like, knobhead. Well, that's going to be me. You're going to be pointing at me and going, knobhead. Professional shite talker. Most definitely. You're going to be doing that to me in the future. That's the dream, isn't it? I mean, talking about work-wise, obviously, being of the grand old age of 27, I have experimented in multiple fields of work. I touched on it a little bit earlier when I was talking about, first proper job was what was JD, and I class that as my proper job because technically speaking, my first ever job was working for the council that I'm in now. I got the job because I was volunteering from the age of kind of 13, 14 years old. I was volunteering at youth clubs and kind of helping out there. And eventually, once I got to kind of about, I think it was 17. It was either 17 or 16. I can't quite remember. I got offered the job role by the council to be a youth worker. Now, initially, this just started me doing just sports sessions and stuff like that at the youth club that I got off the job with. Now, when you're working for the council, typically speaking, once you're a youth worker, they want you to actually do more than just the one club, which is what I had intended to. So I started to branch out to other areas, and also expand my skill set as well. The council offered quite a lot of training courses and stuff like that to go on and expand my skill set with. Which you know what, in many ways I'm quite thankful for. I got paid for all these courses. You're usually always fed on them, which is always a benefit. Listen, we love free food, don't we? Especially when you're paid to eat it. So there you go, happy days. So I did all these extra courses and stuff like that. I think I did the sports session on the Monday. I occasionally went to Bathgate on a Tuesday, which was a kind of I should add, the first club age range was designed for kids that were in primary school going up to secondary school, and the idea was it gave them that platform to kind of get to know what the school was like, get to know where each department was, make the friends before they get into high school, so that they're ready for the next stage up. And that was the idea of the club in the first place. And I ran football sessions and multi-sport sessions. Well, in fairness, actually doing that club there was what led, more or less, probably the very start of why I started to love coaching, and why I used to absolutely got me into coaching. And one of the reasons why I went to the States eventually, down the line when I turned 23. But yeah, I started. I was earning. I'm pretty sure I did the council job for more or less up until I went to the US. So you know, if I got the job, so basically I was doing it paid for about 6 years. But I did still do voluntary stuff in between that as well. I did a lot of volunteering still with the Boys Brigade as well, which was one of the big, which was huge because that helped me get a lot of different avenues that I wouldn't have explored afterwards as well. You know, it's like playing the drums and that. Oh, yeah, like, I remember doing the drums. Was in the we did that. I played the snare drum, and it was like kind of marching band drums. Listen, I never would have tried that. I probably wouldn't go out my way to try it again. But you know what? I can say that I did do it. So you know what? It's kind of cool to say that. Oh yeah, I tried my hand at that. And it got me advanced higher as well that I wouldn't have had before. But it was kind of the same with the council. You know, the council made me dip my toe into things that I definitely wouldn't have done before. You know, and some stuff that's helped me massively or over the course of kind of my life. One of the things that probably most beneficial, actually training wise, is we did all sorts of training when it came to kind of helping like special needs kids, but also the one that I sticks with me constantly is that we did do suicide prevention training, which was one of the most eye-opening courses I ever did, and it made me, you know what, it kind of changed my outlook completely on kind of life and stuff like that as well, because I've had to use that training since, and it's scary. It's one of the most terrifying things I've ever done in my life, having to use that. But one of the things I'm most thankful for that I did. It just changed my outlook completely. It changed my outlook completely. The fact the thought in your head, the fact that you could be speaking to somebody that's not there tomorrow, completely changed my outlook on kind of life, and why I'm so positive, why I'm so driven at times, is to kind of get to a stage, get to a point where I've made a platform on which I can then help people. Because one of the stats that it came up on the course was that suicide is most common in poorer areas. Now, this raises the debate. Obviously, a lot of people were saying the fact that money doesn't make you happy, but what it does buy you is opportunities to be happy. You know, if somebody wants to do horse riding, that's not a cheap hobby to do, or hobby or sport to get into. You know, it's not cheap, and obviously, if you're not got the money to support that, you know, it's you're gonna be unhappy. And it was yeah, it was one of the best training that I ever did. And with that, I used that afterwards. I won't talk about when I did actually use it, but like, it was one of the things I'm most thankful for that I did do in the end. But yeah, listen, this podcast maybe took a slight sinister turn, but I appreciate people listening through that one. But yeah, I did a lot of clubs as well where I was working in deprived areas. With that, I actually got stabbed once. Well, I got. Yeah, I haven't told my mum this, and I was gonna clip some of these things to put them on on Instagram, but then I'm like, I didn't tell my mum this, and she's got me on Instagram, so I'm like, do I post this on Instagram now? But listen, you know what? Basically, I was playing pool once with this this kid that I knew full well was bipolar, and like, you know what, he was always fine whenever I was around. I never saw the turn in emotions anytime I was with him. But I was playing pool once, and you know what, I was starting to win. I should add, I am awful at pool in general. I am not great at pool in general. But I was starting to win, and I was just like, you know, maybe I should ease it up a bit, acting like I actually was winning on purpose. And this kid then all of a sudden just changes completely from being really, really happy to all of a sudden being so angry that he then brings the pool cue up to me, and then goes to absolutely whack me one. I put my arm up, and first time he hits me, I was like, ow, ow, that hurts. And then I put my arm up again, and it was a different angle he came at me the next time. And next thing you know, I've got the pool cue sticking out my arm here, and it's just hanging there, out my arm. It hung for maybe about, I don't know, about 2-3 seconds at my arm. Very, very grim. And then it just kind of pulled it out. It was probably in me maybe about like that much. Yeah, it was not great in the slightest. And the kid afterwards was very apologetic and stuff like that, and whatnot. Unfortunately, this was my first experience of seeing this change in emotion that's instant. I didn't even know that was a thing. But you know what? I learned from that, and well, I can say I've been stabbed, but I don't necessarily know as a brag the fact that I got stabbed by a pool cue, which, in all honesty, does not make sense. Because I still don't get it to this day, because a pool cue is blunt. But apparently it just ended up hanging out my arm, and I'm just like, how does that even happen? But you know what? After it happened, it is what it is. I got checked out afterwards, and I was absolutely fine. There was like bits of chalk and stuff like that there, but so it was that was a weird one. That was in Blackburn. That happened when I was it was one of the summer, it was, yeah, summer kind of camps I did with them. But that was is what it is. Oh dearie me. Uh, just a reminder, team, that we are obviously live when this it's being recorded as well. I've got David in the chat trying to throw me off as well. But he is telling me that my trim is fresh, so I appreciate that, David. Definitely. He's also saying stuff that I'm not going to repeat on on the audio, because it's maybe not quite the right thing to repeat. But he's basically making fun of the fact that I had the pill cue in me. Yeah, more or less. But yeah, that was one of the things I used to do. Usually a lot of the stuff that I did was usually for younger kids. I usually did kind of sessions where I was teaching football or teaching sports that kids typically didn't get a chance to play normally. I remember teaching like the handball, basketball, because basketball is not typically a sport in, more or less, actually, to be honest, the UK, that people typically play, because usually it's all indoors and you have to hire courts for it. It's not actually the easiest one to actually play. So yeah, I was kind of teaching basketball. I mean, in all honesty, it's a hard one for someone that's only 5'5" to start teaching basketball, because let's face it, I'm not particularly great at it myself. I can't jump and I can't shoot. But listen, those that can't play, teach. So yeah, in all honesty, one thing I noticed from coaching is that a lot of the coaching drills that I learned from football were all transferable to other sports. Because listen, any that take that have a ball in the sport, you can transfer to pretty much any sport. Whether it's handball, tennis, football, there's a way that you can adapt it for that sport. And listen, I used that experience to kind of make myself into a better coach, which eventually led me getting a volunteer coach role at Livingston Football Club, which then led to me getting the job in the States. So yeah, listen, the council was where I started all my coaching journey completely. So that, I mean, it was amazing there, but it wasn't just that wasn't the only thing that I did as well. I did a little bit of counselling as well. I was never counselling people by myself. I'm not got the qualifications to do that. But what I was somebody that sat in these sessions sometimes. and I was there just to kind of be there as a second person to listen, not necessarily take notes. We didn't really write anything down, unless it was maybe potentially incriminating. But it was always I always used to kind of listen to people's problems. Some of them absolutely heartbreaking, some of them hilarious, but you couldn't actually talk about them afterwards because people would know exactly who you're on about. I mean, I can talk about some of them here because nobody knows who I'm talking about here, and even now, if anyone did know me from back then, still wouldn't know who I'm talking about. So, it kind of, I mean, I can actually almost mention about it because some of these are like 5-6 years old, stories and whatnot. So, I'm not in trouble for any of these anyway. So, there was one story in particular that always sticks in my head, right? So there's one story that I remember doing. We were doing some sessions with this kid who was having it really rough at home. He was living with his mum, but his mum and dad obviously had separated. His dad, I think, had remarried and whatnot, but he was living with his mum. And his dad had given him I think it was like 40 quid or something like that to buy a PlayStation game. And what he did is he gave a tenner to his mum and he kept 30 for himself. And he came into the club one day and he was greeting, he was crying, he was had obvious bruises on him. Basically, his mum had beaten him up for not doing it the other way around, where he given her 30 and he kept 10 for himself. Then we then questioned the mum on this, to ask why is she being, and this was kind of known fact that this kid had been kind of this was a problem already. So she admitted to the fact that she had hit the boy, and basically she said the reason that she needed the money, right? And it was an obvious lie, I should add this, right? It was one of those where people hesitate for ages, and you can tell straight away that yeah, you've just told us a straight up fib there. It was she said she needed the money for contraception. Now the next thing that happens is one of those situations on where you desperately want to laugh, but you desperately cannot laugh. So the woman then says like she needed the money for contraception. The boy then pipes up, does not miss a single beat with this. The boy then pipes up, I don't know what she needs contraception for. No one's shagging her. And I'm just sitting there going, like, I kind of wanted to go on, mate. That's fucking brilliant. On you go, mate. Like, you just, aye, but yeah, we couldn't laugh at the time. And he was, like, I was proud for him saying that. It's like standing up to this woman who'd obviously caused him so much grief, so much problems, and he just absolutely laid one on her there. I was just like, fucking brilliant, mate. On you go. I don't actually know what the money was for. I think we found out later or something. I think it. No, I can't remember. I can't remember what the actual money was for, but we knew it was a lie anyway. I think how that one ended was, I think he ended up going to live with his dad temporarily, but then went back to his mum because he was kind of starting to look after his mum afterwards. I think that's how that went. I can't fully remember. Afterwards, I just that story there sticks in my mind because I'm just like, Jesus, like, this kid's getting, like, he's having a torrid time at home and stuff like that. He's come to this club because he's getting to play sports. He's getting to learn some life skills and stuff like that. He's getting to, because we used to teach him cooking and stuff like that. I say that I can't really cook, so I didn't really learn much. But he's come to this club, and then obviously he's doing some counseling sessions to kind of clear his head at times and stuff like that. And he's managed to get something out of it, and we've managed to help him that way, which is unreal. That was the whole point of these kind of clubs and drop-ins and stuff like that, for kids to kind of have these spaces in which they could share and kind of talk and clear their heads. David in the chat's just asking, what did you cook? I didn't cook anything. I was never part of that, but one of the benefits of being at these clubs and stuff like that was that they always made too much, so I used to get fed every time I was there. So I'm not gonna lie, these drop-ins, they were usually later at night and stuff like that, but yeah, it was there to kind of teach life skills and all sorts, maybe stuff that maybe they wouldn't get taught at home. But yeah, I was getting paid like 15 quid an hour. I'm not gonna lie, it was a well-paying job, but it was a very, very difficult job at times, and I've not gone back to do it because it was rough going. Especially some days were just ridiculously difficult. So yeah, I never went back to do it afterwards. Because it like particularly the late night ones were the hard ones. The late night ones where you start getting drunk and people and stuff like that, and that's where we used to have like a police officer that was just there, just there, to try and help guide things on, because people were needing help, but at the same time, I'm not gonna lie, it was like the Scottish Jeremy Kyle, every every day there was oh, it was mental sometimes. I mean, one I remember one time this guy was coming to kind of clear his head. He came into this counsellor session. It was me, the counsellor, and then it was him, and we just kind of sat and we were chatting away. And he came in to clear his head, and he would just telling us that basically, I need to own up to something because it's driving me crazy. He's basically saying that he was his missus, who was just outside the window, right? I should add. We had this kind of window to the bit that we did all the council sessions, but just for safety reasons, in case something was to kick off, the security there was able to jump into the room at a moment's notice. His missus was just outside the window, and he was telling us now, he was shagging her sister and somebody else, while still being with her at the same time. They say he just needed to clear his conscience, and we were not legally allowed to tell anyone this, and it was just like, fucking hell, mate, come on, like, you're just doing this for your own conscience. You're not fucking like, we obviously encourage him to kinda, well, if you're doing this, do you think you're doing, like, what do you think what you're doing is right? Try and encourage the conscience to kinda like make him do the right thing, but we can't force anyone to do anything. At the end of the day, the council sessions were there for people to clear their head, to kinda help with mental health and stuff like that. And they were difficult sessions sometimes, and I'm just like, fucking hell. His missus is just outside the door, man, and he's confessing all this, and then we've got to go out there and we've got to face it, and we're legally not allowed to say anything. It's just it's like, it's rough going sometimes with that, because you're just looking this person in the eye and you're like, I can't tell you, I can't tell you. It's just, it's not great. You kind of wanted to find ways that which you could work around it, but it's just not worth it at the end of the day, because legally we sign documents every time they say that we couldn't talk about any of the things that were said in sessions outside of the people that were involved. So it just wasn't worth the charges afterwards. But yeah, that was what some of the drop-ins were. That was my life for kinda 19 to kinda 22, 23 before I went to the States. I was doing that kind of work. I did try to get back into it when I came back from the States, but it was kind of a weird one, right? I went to the States, I tried to get back into it, and they given my job away. They just assumed I wasn't coming back, so they just gave my job away. I got my P45 in the post about a couple months after I came back from the States. I was like, oh, well, that'll be that then. Just actually sacked. So technically I've been fired twice. However, the second time they just fired me by post, which didn't seem possible, but there you go. It was yeah. So I don't really know where to go with that one. I've been sacked twice, technically speaking, but got David still trying to throw me off in the chat. So, guys, as well, like I said, if you're wanting to see live recordings of the podcast, you can catch it on twitch.tv/Simply Spud. And you can try and throw me off whenever I do live recordings if you want. I'm usually fairly good at avoiding it. I'm not gonna lie, David almost got me earlier. But he almost got me earlier. But yeah, he's still trying to throw me off now. But it is what it is. He's talking about games and stuff like that. Which actually, you know what? Now I think about it, it does actually raise a point that I wrote down for podcast as well, because there was an interesting like stand-up show that I watched where it was just like this guy who had bought GTA, and he bought a GTA, and he was just like going around, like, you know, doing what people do in GTA, where they just go around and killing people, get the army after you, you try and kill all of them. If you die, you would just respawn. And then he was like, oh, what's the actual objective to this game? So then he goes and does the objective. He finds out all the things that you have to do in GTA and whatnot. You'll do the story. He gets to the end of the story. Obviously, there's this kind of roundup afterwards, you know, of how many people you killed and stuff like that on GTA. And it says completion 13%. And then he's just sitting there going, but I've just completed the game. And it's just like, no, you've done 13% of what you could have done. And then it kind of posed the question, right, of what happens if at the end of life, right, say you're there dying in your bed, all of a sudden this fucking achievement menu shows up, and it shows you all, like, your completion of life, like, you know, just like what percentage are you? I should add, this is not like a life coach kind of podcast, right? But it did make it interesting to kind of think, what happens if life was just a game, and you at the end of it was getting told that what your completion was of life, and then David just come up with the exact thing I was gonna mention. What about the side missions? You know, what's the objective in life? You know, people might say, you know, marriage, kids, you know, great job, all that, you know. But like, what happens if it was like you're on your deathbed, you're just about to die, and just beforehand you see in front of you your completion, your achievements, your unlocks. You know, you see all this in front of you, and then it says 13%, and you're just like, what the actual, like, what did I miss out on? And and it's just like, you know, that you remember that side mission where you went to a party, someone offered you, well, we're not going to go down that route, I think, for the podcast, but 15% completion on that side mission. You know, I've got to be careful what route I take this podcast sometimes. Honestly, I've got to be careful sometimes where I take with this. But it's imagine it was like a scoring system for life. You're just like, at the end of life, you've got this achievement menu, what you've done, what you've not, and it's just like David just brought up a great point there. On your deathbed, and you can use God mode so you won't die. Yeah. Just go around and literally get away with everything. Oh dear, that opens up a whole can of worms that I really don't want to discuss. Imagine you could go around life with no consequences. Jeez, oh man, that's a dangerous thought, isn't it? Mana saying, everyone that will be 100% is everyone's journey is unique. You know what? That's a very, very good way of looking at things, because, you know, technically speaking, that would potentially be 100% based on yourself. So yeah, you know what? Theoretically, yeah, everyone's journey would be 100%. But imagine it wasn't. You know, a lot of opportunities maybe you miss. You know, just for like the fact that maybe I say no a lot to things. Fair to say, you went through a phase of my life where I said yes to basically everything. Every opportunity that came up, I was like yes, and now I'm shattered all the time. Yeah, I'm just shattered all the time now. This is what getting old's like now. I feel like maybe I've accidentally sped up the process of getting old because I just kept saying yes to everything. So it's been a listen, team. You know what? On that one, I think I'm gonna end the podcast there. I'm probably gonna continue the stream. Continue the stream. But I think I'm gonna end the podcast there because it's been a good one. I've enjoyed this podcast. It's been a, you know what, just doing it myself. You know what, I always debate whether or not these podcasts are gonna go well by myself because, well, for one reason, whenever I take a drink, there's always that pause, and I'm like, that pause. But yes, I'm going to end the podcast there. Thank you very much for watching, team. If you are wanting to maybe get involved in the podcast, make sure you do hop over to twitch.tv/SimplySpud. Also, make sure that you follow on Twitter at the Simply Pod as well to get news on when the podcast is going to be live or any details there. We are obviously also live on YouTube. If you search up Simply Spud, you'll find the podcast there as well, along with little snippets as well of the podcast. If you haven't maybe watched some of them, you might have seen the little snippets as well. But obviously, we are also live on every podcast avenue as well, wherever you get your podcast from. Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, Google Podcast, which I didn't actually know was a thing until recently. But yes, make sure please do follow as well on whatever platform you are listening or watching this on, because it does mean a lot. It is free to do as well, so please do so. And I will catch you on the next one. Thanks again, team.